I'm Nicole Nalepa, and you're listening to Mommyhood Unscripted, real talk about moms for moms. All right, welcome everyone to another great episode of Mommyhood Unscripted. Every guest is great. I always say I'm so excited about today's guest, but I just have fun with every single guest, and every guest that we put on here is a wealth of knowledge and hopefully a great resource for you at home. And today's guest is nothing short of amazing. Lori Atkins is a registered nurse as well as an international board certified lactation consultant and the owner founder of Oh Baby Lactation Care in Glastonbury, Connecticut. Oh, baby. She has done it all. She's worked as a labor and delivery nurse at a large city hospital, running an obstetrical clinic, teaching all kinds of childbirth and breastfeeding education, and also creating a comprehensive hospital-wide breast pump program, which is so needed and so awesome that you were behind that. So, Lori, without further ado, welcome to Mommyhood Unscripted.
I can't tell you how happy I am to be here with you. Like I said, we're going to
I know it's going to be hard to reel us in because
I know that's okay.
Hey, as I was saying before we started, this is the beauty of podcasts, right? We have that long form conversation. We're not going to just to give you a quick 20-second soundbite and call it a day, right? We have a little bit more to dive into, a little bit more time.
Explore a little bit. Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
So from the Boob Tube, which I work, to now the boob that where you work. That's what we're talking
about. The rainbow boob, she's always with me, like I showed you before.
Is that an hacky sack boob?
You could say that. We use them for teaching, and most lactation professionals, counselors, lactation consultants, everybody.
Yeah.
This is just a great teaching tool. You can talk about latch, engorgement, and we're diverse here at Oh Baby, so we wanted rainbow boob, and I put it out to the universe. I said, hey, somebody, because I have all colors. I've got a darker color, flesh tone. I've got a lighter color, and I'm like, I want rainbow. Who doesn't love rainbow? So I think she was from Michigan.
Wow.
Messaged me on a Facebook group and said, I make these, and I'm like, can you use rainbow yarn? And she said, sure. And here we are.
I love it. That's the first rainbow boobie I've ever seen.
Yes, this is where she lives. She lives right near me, so she goes wherever I go. She's in some of my social media. We have fun with rainbow boob.
That's awesome. Good. Now, Lori, I feel like breastfeeding is almost not a taboo topic, but there's still this kind of unspoken stigma where women aren't talking as openly and freely about it. I mean, it's 2023, and why are we still shy about talking about boobs and the amazing job that they have?
Well, because we have sexualized boobs.
Yeah.
Through millennium. I mean, there's so much connected with the sexuality of a breast that in some situations, it's really hard to tease that apart for people. Right.
Yeah. That makes so much sense.
Women have been shamed for their bodies for, again, millennia. This isn't a new thing,
right.
Although breastfeeding, interestingly enough, if you look back in some of the old masters, paintings and such, breasts were out for all to see. The baby Jesus is being breastfed, with a naked breast, multiple paintings.
Right.
So, breastfeeding was seen as feeding a baby back in, caveman times. And I talk about that a lot, about cave babies. But then we've added the sexuality to it. So it's really hard for people to pull that apart sometimes, and even for women themselves. So it's a confusing message we send to each other and to women about, the boob is sexy. Oh, wait, you feed a baby with it. Oh, wait, it's sexy. Oh, wait, you feed a baby. And ooh, don't look. And so it gets just meshed together, and it's hard. It's hard sometimes. So I think that is one of the reasons that it's still tough to talk about. It's the human norm, right? We don't say that formula feeding is bad, and we'll talk about that throughout our whole time together. Never, never, never. Babies feed how they feed. But certainly, I think that looking at it, is it the biological norm? Yes, it is. So babies feed.
I'm so happy that we are talking about all things breastfeeding today, and not breastfeeding too, because, there's so many pressures out there, right, for women, and it's so interesting because through conversation with other women and different generations, I've heard, like the formula fed generation, the oh, I was all about breastfeeding generation. And then now it feels like we have the option and we have the information and resources out there. And it's a
Yes,
matter of, our choice
absolutely.
generation.
We need to get that message out, I think, for every woman and
Hmm.
every parent, and say, it is your choice.
Right.
And how can we help you meet your goal?
Hmm.
Because parents come into this with so much baggage, right? They come in
Oh, yeah.
with family pressures, cultural pressures, all kinds of
Yeah.
on top of the science that, okay, maybe I do want to breastfeed my baby. Oh, wait, I have to go back to work at 6 weeks and I
Yeah.
can't. Yeah, and right, there's so much, and oh, I don't really have transportation. I've got to take, I've got to get to some lactation help, but it's across town and I can't get there because I work. There are so many of those details that come into whatever the journey is that a family finds themselves on. So it's important for all of us to kind of meet a parent where they are and not just
Hmm.
throw preconceived statements and facts and thoughts at them. We need to kind of talk to them and say, where are you coming from? What are you coming to this with, and what do you want out of it?
Right. Ah, and I feel as though I had a little bit of information about breastfeeding before I became a mom, but why is it that I felt so unprepared for that moment? I mean, I know obviously being a new parent, for example, that was one factor. But, even coming in with my second child, every baby's different. And I just still felt like, even though this wasn't my first rodeo, why is it that it's still such a big learning curve? And this is something that, like you said, it's part of our bodies. It's human nature. I mean, I have information out there, but there's nothing that could prepare me for the experience and prepare me for the ups and downs of it too.
Totally. And how many people do you see breastfeed every day? Not many, right? I mean, it's not like,
No.
so you don't live with your cousins and your sisters and your extended family that you see them breastfeed every day as a normative experience. I mean, you do, but you don't.
Right.
It's not like they live with you, or the communities that we used to have, this nuclear family with these spokes that went out everywhere, in farming communities and agricultural communities that we used to live in, and everybody breastfed, and the cow breastfed, and the cow was feeding over here in the field, and
Right.
the goats, and you're milking the goats. It was just part of life. And now we've kind of secreted it away into your home, and gosh, you shouldn't breastfeed on that bench, and don't breastfeed on that beach because that's gross, and don't breastfeed that toddler because ew. There's so much isolation, I think, with breastfeeding, that you don't pick up the norm parts as I think that we used to.
Mm.
Families used to be able to pick it up. So women are really left with their laptops and, hopefully supportive breastfeeding people in their lives. Sometimes they are. Some families are really supportive,
Hmm.
um, and it's their norm, and they, everybody kind of comes to the rescue. And
Hmm.
other times women are, moving across the country or across the world, and they're just, hopefully they have an internet connection and they can get some help, but it can be tough.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
don't feel bad about that, because it's very much the normal experience about how did I not know this?
right.
All
Even,
the time from people like, how did I
yeah.
not know this? And I'm like, because you didn't need to know it before.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Like, with breast pumping and all that, that's a whole other ball of wax, which I'm sure we're going to get into. But
Yeah.
but it seems as though you hear more when you do dive into this topic and you do hear from other women,
Mhm.
friends, family, you hear more about the struggles than you do about the positive outcomes of it.
Really good point. You know what? But it's like anything else. What about birth? Did you hear that was beautiful or wonderful or normal?
Yeah.
All the fishtail stories, the story, well, my birth was,
Right.
15 hours. Well, mine was 33 hours, so I think it's part of human nature and a part of our culture that the bad stuff gets shared. I mean, it's
A little
always,
bit more.
the Eagles wrote a song about that, so just sharing all the bad stuff, we gotta share, so I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
But you don't see the norm, you
Right.
don't see the okay stuff. That's not exciting to share.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. And that scares people too. Oh my God,
Yeah.
my nipples might
Exactly.
bleed. Oh my
Right.
gosh.
Uh,
Yeah.
painful.
I
And
know.
how do you know if the breastfeeding journey is right for you? Like from the moment, we're in the hospital, we have the baby, like right away, they try to typically put the baby on your breast, right? To see if the
Right.
baby will latch. That happens instantaneously. It feels like such a blur,
And then the baby's like, and you're like, and not to be weird, but the only other person that's probably been at your breast like that has been your partner, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, oh my God, there's a human being that's going to get sustenance from here.
Me?
So
Yeah.
what happens, Nicole, is very much, and you can reflect on this, and anybody listening can think about it, is a big role change, right? You've been a partner, maybe you've been a daughter, a wife, a sister, a coworker. You've got so many roles in your life, and all of those things boil down to now I'm a mother. And
Mm,
what does this mean? And is motherhood this? So there's so much, and then the hormone drop from delivery, and the hormones, it's a thing.
right.
So there is a lot of emotion that goes into that moment too. So how do you know if breastfeeding is the right thing? I think you feel it, and studies show us that women who are successful partners, women, parents who are successful in their breastfeeding journey tend to be happier and have less postpartum depression. Well,
Mm,
that's that's a little bit of like common sense, right?
hmm
Parents who don't meet their breastfeeding needs. Excuse my dog in the background. Molly, come here. Um, Parents who don't meet their feeding needs tend to have more risk for postpartum depression, right? Because you didn't get to where you wanted to be. You saw yourself a certain way. So along the journey, it's okay to change your goal.
hmm
Many parents come into breastfeeding thinking that they're going to exclusively breastfeed and they're going to put a rocking chair in the meadow and have all the rabbits at their feet and the
And
wind will
Snow
be
White's going
blowing
to emerge.
and their hair is going to flow with the bread and they're going to milk and honey. And when that doesn't happen, it can be really hard to, I think,
Hmm
that people have this vision about what breastfeeding is going to look like for them. And if it isn't that, it can be one more thing that can be hard. Postpartum, we don't want feeding to be hard, but
Right.
it can be a journey. It can be an experience. So it's a long answer to a short question. I think it's really an individual family decision about
hmm
how babies are fed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's every experience is different, right? With every kid too.
Oh my gosh, yes, it is. Every baby's another human being. I say to
Hmm
parents all the time, this baby has never been born. This human has never been on this earth before. It's a whole different ballgame.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way
Mm,
to look at it. I like that perspective.
the new human. I say it all the
So
time. Oh my God,
fresh.
this is a new
A
human.
new human.
Yeah.
So, what is the most crucial time to breastfeed? If you choose you're going to do it, I've heard like 3 months is really the goal. Like if you can get through 3 months, that's great. Then I've heard 6 months. Yeah, 6 months if you
Oh,
made
I
it.
see what you're asking. Yeah. So the American Academy of Pediatricians states that breastfeeding um, exclusively to 6 months and then complementary foods afterwards and upwards of as long as mom and baby want to.
Okay.
So it's really simple. That's the suggestion. What we live with is a whole different, again, all the things we just talked about all factor into that. So
Right.
when not that I get bristly about this, but when the recommendations when I say what I just said, what
Hmm
if there's a parent out there going, oh my God, I didn't even get that. I couldn't even make, 3 ounces a day. And, I was in the ICU after my baby came and I made 3 ounces a day and that's not enough
hmm
for my baby. Breastfeeding is not all or nothing. And I think, sure, we have the recommendations,
Right.
the experts, right? But then I'm very careful to gently discuss those suggestions within the family's framework
Right.
and say, yes, this is recommendation, but look what else you're doing for your baby. I think that's a
hmm
message that I connect those two pieces very clearly.
It's not a one size fits all.
It isn't. And I
Right.
can't stand when people, and I mean people like even people in my profession and other moms or other parents who get on this really, what's the word I'm looking for? This kind of shtick about exclusivity And I understand that exclusive breastfeeding is great, but lots of parents don't get there.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we then interpret that with them of saying, but you're still really doing good stuff for your baby?
Right. You got to work with them. Like,
Yes, you got to work with that. And
yeah.
putting out, so I don't mind that you asked me about the recommendations,
Mm-hmm.
but I just want to put it out there to people that yes, this is a recommendation, but breast milk is good no matter how you get and how much you get into your baby and how much you want to do it. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And if the baby doesn't latch, I know both my kids actually right away didn't, and they offered donor milk initially. Donor milk or formula. What is that? I know that that's probably a personal choice, for the parent in that situation. But again, here was another thing that was being thrown at me right after I had a C-section, and I'm going, I don't know. I don't remember reading this in the, when you're a parent.
Okay? Yeah. Okay. So donor milk is an amazing choice for parents who choose it. Donor milk, for most of us in Connecticut, we use the Mother's Milk Bank in Northeast, which is in Cambridge and Boston. And milk comes from parents all over probably all over the Northeast. I'm just going to use that. And gets shipped to Boston, and they pasteurize the milk. They test it and pasteurize it and test it again and test it again. I think our milk supply is probably safer than our blood supply. And that pasteurized milk kills lots of, kills HIV, CMV, all kinds of bacteria and viruses, and gets shipped to lots of places. But in Connecticut, we have depots in Connecticut and dispensaries, so women can drop their milk off. And there's a dispensary I know in Glastonbury, right around the corner from me, that women can actually go, or families can go and get milk for their babies if they need it. Wow. Now, they're not talking, full feeding most of the time.
Right.
But many times donor milk is looked at as bridge milk. I love that term because it signifies until there's enough of a supply in the nursing parent, there's this option for human milk that you can use. And most people have to buy it. It's not cheap. I think it's
it's expensive, right?
Some insurance situations will cover it, most won't, but that's something that parents can explore with the bank in Boston. They're wonderful. Yeah. So, there's I think like I said, Mother's Milk Bank Northeast. But it's a wonderful option for parents who choose to use some human milk in their supplementation journey.
Right. All right. I wanted to bring that up because I remember hearing that, with my son when it was offered at first. He was a preemie, so that was kind of a
preemie.
He was about a month early.
Okay.
But he was low weight, so we had to basically, thankfully I was able to pump and, supplement and feed that way alongside with formula. But when that was all happening, I'm like, donor milk, wait, really? That's a thing? And, I think just in that one instance that our insurance had covered just that moment in time. So I had no idea about it. And
donor milk usage in micro preemies, very small babies who, the tiniest of babies, can drastically decrease a risk of catastrophic infection for them.
Wow.
So donor milk can save them from necrotizing enterocolitis, which is a very bad thing. So it's used in birthing hospitals for preemies, but we also know that there's lots of other good things that come from donor milk as well. Some things are destroyed in milk in the pasteurization process, but it's an option, right? Parents don't need to use it. Sometimes parents are like, ew, there's an ick factor, which we address all the time. And then the choices are, to say to a parent, okay, guess what? We can feed your baby your milk, donor milk, or formula, or a combination. I have parents who use a combination of the three. So just one more thing. It's good.
More thing. And it's all about, it's good to have options, right?
Absolutely.
Now I want to talk about milk supply. So initially, when you have your baby, and if again, this is all situational, if it does happen and you're going down the breastfeeding journey and you've committed to it, is it normal for your breasts to swell and become almost engorged in the first few weeks as you're trying to figure out where your supply's at and how much your baby needs?
Yep. Matter of fact, just in my practice, I have found that engorgement can be one of the main reasons that women give up breastfeeding.
Really? Well, I mean, it's painful, so I get
It's
it.
not just, so it's interesting you brought this up because I have this conversation often. It's not just milk coming in. I hear that all the time. Oh, my milk's coming in and my breasts are huge. It's a combination of, yes, the milk is more voluminous. So there is more volume coming at about 4 or 5 days, 4, 5, and 6. But there's also IV fluid and pregnancy fluid. When you were pregnant, do you remember little sausage fingers
Oh, yeah.
and ankles and your face?
Mm-hmm.
All of that
Feet.
fluid, oh my God, the feet, right? All of that fluid needs to go somewhere after you have a baby. So the body kind of dumps it out. You sweat it out. Remember that? You sweat, you wake up in the middle of the
Mm-hmm.
night, sweat. Oh, that's fun. Soaking the sheets. Or you pee it out. You
Oh,
just pee
yeah.
it
I've
out.
heard of that. Yep.
The other part is that the breast tissue can absorb some of that fluid and make the breast super hard, along with the breast milk that's coming in. So we have limited space, right? And then we have an unwanted party guest of the fluid that's coming in there and just making things really hard and swelly, right?
Right.
So then what happens is the nipple can get flat because we've got this hard, firm breast. So the nipple
Huh.
can flatten, right? So if the breast is super taut, like a balloon, this is a great example. If the breast is like a balloon, how can the baby latch on it? It's like it can't even grab
Right.
the nipple sometimes. So that hot, hard breast is not just milk, but fluid. So usually engorgement, about 2 or 3 days, I think, for the worst of it. But during that time frame, it can really be hard to latch. So we teach a combination of massage and hand expression,
Mm-hmm.
milk out of the front of the breast and massage toward the armpit because you've got big lymph nodes in the armpit. So massaging some
Right.
of that fluid gently toward the armpit works beautifully. So, I've seen that work just in 20 minutes, help really soften a breast. So if parents understand this beforehand, they can deal with it when it happens and know that it's not the end of the breastfeeding journey,
Right.
right? So it goes back to education, big
Yeah.
time.
It's so
So
important to
it's so I'm
understand.
glad you brought that up because it's really interesting how bumps in the road of breastfeeding, and if parents and families don't understand that this is just a bump and we can get past it, it can just be not good.
All right. I
So
hear hand expression and I wince like crazy. It's just
oh,
something
you,
that it just
you,
makes
oh,
me feel like it's painful. And so are there any alternates than hand expression? Like can a pump or even putting the baby at breast to suck out
sure.
some
Oh
that
yeah.
also be a substitute?
Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. Pumping can absolutely help. And massage, like I said, that massage toward the armpit and knowing that it's transitory, that it'll go away.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And even like
definitely.
compresses too, that helps, right?
Cool compresses,
Cool
actually. A
compresses.
lot of
Okay.
people are kind of warm. And I'm like, if something's hot and swollen, do we want to use, we don't want warm,
Right. You want
maybe
cool.
warm for the milk to flow, but in between, definitely cool. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. So how do you avoid mastitis? Wasn't prepared for this either when I had a baby.
Wow. So avoiding it, that's an interesting thought. So think about it so number one thing is avoiding nipple damage, because if you've got an open area on the nipple, it's just going to it can lead to more infection, right?
Yeah.
That's a thought. But there's lots of parents with no nipple damage that end up with mastitis. Best thing to avoid is good breastfeeding practices, a deep latch, trying to get complete the baby to drain the breast, efficiently. Again, never draining the breast completely. The breast never drains.
Hmm.
There's always milk being filtered through. So you will never get a full empty from a breast. And that's an important thought to kind of remember. Parents,
Right.
I don't feel that that's emptying me. I'm like, well, baby only takes about 67% of available milk in a feeding. So the pump, I don't know, to expect a lot from that pump is a tough thing.
Right.
So being on the lookout, getting a decent, nutritional base. I mean, taking care of yourself, sleep, nothing to do with washing the breast, none of that actually. Letting the breast have its own bacteria content on the outside of the skin is probably a good thing, just
Hmm.
breast and baby. But and just having good supports, generally, I guess if you're going back to nutrition, if you're getting a decent intake of all kinds of goodies in your diet, that's probably a good protection as well. But it
Hmm.
can come. So I think having a good relationship with your provider,
Hmm.
your OBGYN provider, because they're the ones that are probably going to take care of you, and lactation
Hmm.
if you have lactation support.
Yeah.
But I tell people not to mess with mastitis if they have the chills and shaking fever It usually requires antibiotics, but then you
Yeah.
feel better and it goes away. But yeah, don't wait it out. You
I
know,
think how I got it, I think I waited too long to feed my baby, or if or
uh-huh.
the pumping schedule, something got messed up, like from work to home. I had some kind of transition. It was a while back. So it's always, you
Yeah,
kind of have
training.
PTSD from that.
And you're right about draining the breast. And I think I'd have to check it, but in my brain, I want to say that mastitis and plug ducts occur more around the holidays. And
Oh,
that
that
makes
makes
sense, right?
sense.
Because you're
Yeah,
busy, you may miss a feeding, or you may pop a bottle in the baby's mouth and forget to pump. And
right.
so, yeah, stagnant breast milk is never a good thing either. Yeah.
Oh, yes. And obviously
Letting it
there's
sit for a long period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, there are all these guidelines on how long breast milk can sit and when it needs to be refrigerated, frozen.
Mhm.
When is it a time to start supplementing with formula? So how do you know when you can't sustain enough, And I know I hear from a lot of friends that their milk supply starts to dwindle once their baby is, 6 months and older and start to
Eating,
introduce
sure,
the
with
foods.
food, sure. So how do you don't need to supplement with formula unless you need to, or unless you want to. You
Okay.
know, most of the time, well, some of the time, the breast milk supply will just kind of follow your journey, right? So if there is reason to abruptly stop breastfeeding, or the mom gets pregnant with a second baby, that really drops off a breast milk supply, and that's
Oh,
important information to know.
yeah.
So with a new pregnancy, once that placenta starts to work in the new pregnancy, hormones rise in the placenta and breast milk drops drastically for the most part. So then if you have a 9-month-old baby who still needs to get some kind of, it's either formula or breast milk for the first year for the most part.
Mhm.
So some families need to introduce formula. So I think it depends on the reason, is a short answer to that question.
What if you don't have enough of a supply? Like, say the parents are going away on a vacation and
Right.
you're not going to have proper storage, for example, of the breast milk while you're gone for a few days, and you look at your supply in the freezer and it's not enough to sustain the baby while you're away. What kind of advice would you give?
Going back to what we talked about before, do you want to add a little donor milk to that? Do you want to add, does your sister have milk in a storage container somewhere? People do that all the time. They informally share milk. Do you want to add formula? You can certainly add formula if you need to. So I wouldn't spring it on a baby on a trip, but certainly if you need to add formula, there are ways to do. You can mix it with breast milk little by little, so the baby gets used to the taste. There's lots of ways to do it.
Can you do power pumping? I've heard of that term, but I don't actually
Sure.
know much about it.
So a power pump is a way to raise the initial letdown response in 1 hour. So power pumping is a way to increase supply. It usually doesn't work like this. It usually takes about a week or so, although some people see results quicker. And it doesn't work for everybody, but it's a way to pump 3 times or so in an hour in short bursts. So it's usually 20 minutes on or 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off. And so that done every day, one time a day for a few days or every other day, it depends on what the parent can do, can really help boost supply in some people. But it's a good thing to try when parents are like, oh, I need more milk. But it's not something you can do magically and the spigot opens.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have to be careful if you are doing the power pumping that you're not like overproducing, right? Do you run that risk?
Yeah, not really, because most people who choose to do a power pump are people thinking about, oh, I need more milk. So,
Okay.
oversupply really isn't something that you see unless there's lots of milk movement or in a short period of time, especially from birth. Like we see oversupply
Mhm.
people who are like, I'm going to pump for my supply for my fridge, and then they start pumping like right from birth, and then feeding the baby, and then pumping, and then they end up with just ridiculous amount of milk.
Breastfeeding takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy. And, we were talking earlier just about the angst that is placed upon mothers surrounding this topic. That's not going to help the milk supply, right?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because I talk to parents all the time about what really affects milk supply. Illness, if you get sick,
Hmm.
a peer of mine in the breastfeeding community says fevers can kind of dry up the milk for short periods of time. So with COVID, bad, stomach bugs, if you're, vomiting and having diarrhea, your body's like, hold on with the milk supply. I got to go
Right.
deal with this, and then I'll come back and make you more milk.
Little
So
dehydrated there. Yeah.
your period coming back, that the hormonal shifts with the period can kind of slow milk supply. Again, these are things that usually bounce back in a couple of days.
Okay.
But the big unknown and the big meaning in all of this is stress. And how do I say to a parent, back off your stress? I mean, that's laughable, right? I know that you probably have, you and everybody else has, we have shamans, we have all kinds of wellness experts. Everybody tells us how to reduce our stress, but really what does? So, so I say to parents, deal with what you can, right?
Right.
Going back to work is a reality for most women. Just is. I mean, sometimes it's the silver lining. A little bit of the pandemic has been there's more remote work. So sometimes parents aren't worried about shuttling a baby out to daycare, or maybe they are, and they're having someone come in the house for care. But that just the stress of pumping, you know what it's like to put your stuff, to get all the stuff, are they clean? Do I have the right bag? Do I have all the, it's just,
Yeah.
And then stress with the relationships and stress with money and all the things that can stress out families can definitely impact milk supply.
Right.
And
Which is so unfortunate because it's something.
Fair, but
yeah.
But that's why I say, okay, so deal with the things you can. Maybe you do a little meditation while you're pumping. There are pumping meditations on YouTube.
Are there really?
Yeah, girl, you can go on YouTube and there's all kinds of breast pumping meditations. It doesn't even have to be breast pumping. It can be music that you love, or scroll your phone, go on TikTok. I don't care what it is, but disengage a little bit from the worry. One of my favorite tricks, I'll give you a little trick.
Okay.
A little Hershey kiss when you sit down to pump. Just eat a kiss, not on your breast, but eat it. Eat it. If you like chocolate or a Skittle or whatever, that just a little treat to help you go, right?
I like that little moment that we all crave. Yeah.
Those Dove chocolate commercials come on, and I always laugh because I'm like, oh, that's what I need. I got to do. Mama's a little bag of chocolate. So stress is the big unknown.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can make a huge difference on supply.
And we're equipped to multitask as mamas. Like, we know how to do that. But when you throw in pumping and all that to the mix, like it weighs heavy on us after a while.
And so groups are important. I really love Facebook groups. Sometimes they're terrible with advice, but most of the time women are looking out for each other. I think I like to be optimistic about that.
Yeah.
Finding support where you can. Can you go to a mommy group? Some of them are coming back in person, after the pandemic. Is it okay to be on Facebook? LeLaG League does groups on Facebook. Breastfeeding USA has a great Connecticut chapter, and then different parts of the state. One of my friends is running the Eastern Connecticut Breastfeeding USA chapter. She does online support, and they're starting to come back. Putnam, I can't remember where, but anyway, so there are mommy groups, kind of popping back up. And so reach out to, look to see what would be helpful. Is it a Saturday that would help? Is like I said, is online okay?
Right. Zoom.
Really
even.
make a Zoom. It kind of stinks, but if that's what you got, we've made this work over the last 3 years, right?
Right. Exactly.
We really have. It's not ideal, but if it can be helpful. So reaching out for support and finding out other people's stories helps mitigate your own a little bit. It helps you not feel so alone, right?
Right. Absolutely. And that's what it's all about, is really sharing your experiences if you're comfortable, or just maybe being present to hear other people's experiences. So maybe that'll open up a door and open yourself up to sharing, because I think that there's so much to be said when we're all like sharing collectively in our experiences and finding that safe space. That's,
you don't feel so weird.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
To her. Oh my God, it happened even worse,
Right.
And then somebody always finds something funny, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you can laugh at yourself, it just, or put yourself into perspective, problem you thought was so terrible. And then you're like, okay, it still was kind of terrible, but at least I could laugh a little bit about it.
Exactly.
It brings that stress level.
Yep. And you brought up periods. I'm glad that you brought that up too, because
talk about.
I've heard that when you are breastfeeding, there is the tendency that you may not necessarily have your period. And that a lot of women still think in 2023 that you can't get pregnant. when you're breastfeeding and if you don't have a menstrual cycle. So we're gonna dispel that rumor, right?
We're going to totally dispel that rumor. You've heard the term Irish twins?
Yes. Is this how
A lot of
Irish
people
twins are
don't know
born?
what that is. It's two babies born in what, a year? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
That can happen. I have my best friend is an Irish twin. So yes, you can ovulate during breastfeeding. And I tell families all the time, and your period can come back anywhere from 6 weeks to 16 months after a baby. So it really is random. There's really no way to know when that's going to be. I was in the 6 weeks camp, and I'm like, you got to be kidding. I was breastfeeding a take-home baby all the time, and I'm like, my period came back. I was like, stomped around in circles for a while. So yes, it can come back, and with that can come ovulation. So usually, the hormones of breastfeeding preclude ovulation because of the hormones of ovulation. The two don't play together well in the basketball court. They just don't like each other. So if one is kind of in charge, the other one's kind of are at bay. But that's not the same for everybody. And so I tell parents all the time, make sure you have a great contraceptive plan, regardless of the thought about when because just because you don't have a period doesn't mean you can't pop an egg out anywhere in there. So if you are,
Pop an egg out.
hetero,
I love it.
well, if you're in
I know it's true.
if you're in a sexual relationship with a male partner and you're female, then
yeah,
when two people love each other.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so things can happen. So I always tell parents, get condoms, throw them in a drawer just in case. And it's really important. I have these conversations with people all the time, and they're like, "Oh, we haven't thought about it." And I'm like, "Okay, we're going to talk about it today."
Yeah, it's very important to
And I make it
discuss
funny.
this.
I try,
Yeah.
because, and so, but a period can come back, and there are a lot of people who are surprised by that, who say, "Oh, I just had a little spotting and some cramping, but I thought, oh, it can't be my period," and it was, and they get pregnant. So it's important to have a contraceptive plan that you discuss with your provider, but start thinking about it before you even have the baby. I know it's kind of a bummer because you don't want to think about it, but you should, especially in family planning. Are you having a baby? Did you have an IVF pregnancy? Are you going to have another? Is where does breastfeeding fit in this? Because we know, like we just said, that your milk supply can drop with a new pregnancy. So if you're planning on children close together, you got to think about, how am I going to feed baby number one if it's under a year, when baby number two comes around.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds
so
a little
there's a lot
stressful.
to think about. Well, we try not to make it be, and say, let's just talk. If you talk about it ahead of time, and you don't even have to make a hard and fast plan, but to kind of have it, okay, but just be on the lookout for a period to come back at any time. I think that's important. There's something called the lactation amenorrhea method, LAM, and those are interested can look it up. And you can use, I think it uses temperature and cervical mucus for people who prefer natural family planning. Breastfeeding can be protective against ovulation, but it's not a fail-safe.
Okay. Good to know. Also, weight gain. This is a very popular topic amongst my friends right now who are breastfeeding or just stopped. Some women, I don't know, have had the experience where they've just shed the weight while they've breastfed. And then I'm hearing from another camp now saying, why aren't I shedding the pounds like I did with baby number one? Or why aren't I shedding the pounds at all? Just in general, this is my first time.
So, oh my God, that's such a loaded question.
Does our body hold on to fat sometimes?
Okay, so is it Serena Williams, one of the Williams sisters? I remember reading this a couple years ago, and she was nursing her toddler. And she had the last 10 pounds she was holding on to, and she couldn't train effectively to go back to the professional tennis circuit. She was breastfeeding, and she decided to wean her daughter because she couldn't lose that last 10 pounds. And it was such a bitter, it was, I don't know if she wrote the article or somebody else did, but it was kind of, so I think about her and I think, oh my God, how bittersweet for her.
Oh.
How hard and that she shared that. I was really impressed too, because it's a really segue into this conversation. I don't know 100% why some women really lose the weight and others don't. Is it, it's a mix of hormones, it's a mix of calories, it's a mix of activity, all the things that I think people don't lose weight for anyway, so yes, you need about 500 calories extra a day to make breast milk. All right. But if you sit down with a box of Mallomars, that's not, you know what I mean? I have been a Malamar. I don't know where that came from. Probably my
Malamars
husband.
are yummy. I love
My
that
husband's a huge
throwback.
fan.
Yeah.
I'm like, nah. I don't know why I was thinking about that, but you get, the whole in versus out thing. And I mean, we eat, I remember, finishing off my kids' mac and cheese. Like there'd
Oh,
be a couple
yeah.
of bites left, and you'd be like, "Oh, this is my lunch."
Eating over
And
the
I have,
stove, right? Or making
right.
sure no one's looking as you're eating with the big kitchen spoon. Absolutely.
You've totally been there. So I think mothers, parents eat poorly if they let themselves.
Yes.
I think there's a better focus on that now than when my kids were young. My kids are in their 20s and 30s. So there is definitely a more focus on the parent now, but still you can let it get away from you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't have a really good answer. I think if parents are really worried about weight, they should talk to their OB provider. They should talk to, most hospital systems. And there's great, nutrition people out there who do Zoom stuff now. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a great, it's a little bit more accessible to find that. What's the activity level? Is there postpartum depression in there somewhere? Are you getting out and moving with the baby a little bit? Maybe that'll make you feel better. I don't know. I think there's a lot of answers to that question. I really wish there's no one magic thing. And I get pissed off to say when people and companies take advantage of that, right? Everybody wants your money after you've had a baby, everybody. And I think that can prey on that as well. But I think we need to be kind to ourselves. We need to give ourselves grace and say, okay, if I'm hanging on to that 20 pounds, I'm hanging on to that 20 pounds for now.
Mm-hmm.
I may not feel great about it, but I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to love myself no matter what. I'm going to love my tiger stripes. I've earned them. So I think it's a new acceptance of ourselves, perhaps. I don't know. I'm getting a little philosophical, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I like that. And
I
it feels
don't know.
good to hear that. I think everyone needs to hear that from time to time again.
Parenthood changes ours,
Mhm.
it changes our soul, it changes our mind, it changes our spirit, it changes our body. And we've got to kind of accept that a little bit, I
Mhm.
think. Not to say that there aren't ways to be healthy,
Right, right.
and feel good about yourself again. I think that's what we need to focus on. Maybe your friends need to think about feeling good about themselves no matter what's happening to their bodies.
Yeah, and just know that they are not the only ones that are going through it, and it's completely normal.
And my oldest is over 30, and I still have my postpartum punch. That's my bad joke.
Oh my God. But you have one over 30?
I
Oh
do.
my
My
gosh.
oldest son.
Wow. I never would have
I
guessed,
know.
Lori.
Well, thank you for that.
I mean, I guess and if you're listening on, Apple or Spotify or something, you're gonna have to go on and see Lori's picture because she looks good.
Well, thank you for that. It's good gene pool. Italian women with the good skin.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. And they are the loves of my life. And it's so much fun when you have a little child. It's so hard to imagine them as adults, but you know what? Two things are good about adult children. You can drink with them, which is super fun. And you look at the humans, all the stuff that you did
Yeah.
now with your babies and the stuff you worry about, it translates into putting a good human out into the world. And let me tell you, that is the best reflection of all of this parenting baloney that you're in the middle of right now.
Yeah.
Is then looking out and saying, "Oh, I put a decent human into the world." It's a beautiful thing.
Oh,
So
I
look
love
forward
that.
to that too. Don't lament the baby stage too much because there's so much more to look forward to.
Yeah, and I'm totally there right now with my daughter. Oh,
How old
six
is she?
months. Six
Oh,
months. And I love this stage and I'm just holding on to every day because
there's so much to look forward to. Oh my God, there's
yeah,
so much. So
yeah,
love the stuff that you're in, but don't worry about the stuff that's coming because it's fun too.
right, right. No, you're right. Every stage, right, is different and great in its own way.
Exactly.
It
It
changes and
is. It
yeah.
is. I am
And
here to tell you, it's a beautiful thing.
thank you. And I think it changes so fast too. So we can actually, you get used to one stage and then it changes like that, I feel. So I almost feel like human nature does that. So you're not going to be too upset, right? Letting go of the other stage.
So James Taylor says in his song, I can't remember the name of the song at the moment, but the secret of life, the
Oh
secret of
yeah.
life is enjoying the passing of time. And I literally tell myself that when my kids walked across their high school stage, when they walked across their college stage, when they got their first jobs and they moved out, I remember thinking, secret of life is enjoying the passing of time, sobbing.
Oh,
Secret of life is enjoying the passing of time,
exactly.
crying.
Oh,
I know.
that's a good one. Thank you for
Oh,
that. I'm going to
you're
remember that.
welcome.
I'll have to contact you in another 15, 20
See,
years and say,
go
hey,
listen to the
Lori.
song, listen to the song, and you will cry.
And I'm
You
from
will.
James Taylor land. He lives in
Oh,
the Berkshires where I'm from.
oh,
So
so
you're really
you,
speaking my language here.
there you go. Absolutely.
And Lori, really quick, one thing we didn't really get into that I do want to touch on
Yeah.
is lactation consultants,
Oh,
where your job comes into play and how does someone go about getting one? Is this something that's offered right away? Is it through a hospital, insurance?
I think every birthing hospital in Connecticut has IBCLCs on staff, and that stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. There are tons of breastfeeding helpers out there who do not have those letters who are excellent, excellent supports as well. In the hospital, the nurses that are available postpartum have extensive training in breastfeeding help. So it's not like they work postpartum and just kind of like, oh, I don't know how to breastfeed a baby. They help. So the absence of an IBCLC is not a bad thing. If the care is elevated to the point of needing an IBCLC, there are, definitely, like I said, in the hospital system, sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes the hospitals maybe don't have somebody on the weekend, and I
Right.
but I'm hearing about that. I worked at St. Francis for years, and I'm so sad to hear sometimes that they don't have somebody on staff. But it's a reality in hospitals. Everyone's cutting back, but there should be somebody available to help, and that person is probably well experienced to do so. If you come out of the hospital and need more help, there are many ways to do that. Some hospital systems have IBCLCs on staff that you can go back and see. They do outpatient clinic. I think Manchester does that. And I want to say Griffin Hospital and a couple of others probably that Danbury. I think there's a few places that you can go back to the hospital, which is kind of cool. And some people don't want to do that. They want to stay in their community, and they're community-based IBCLCs who have private practices, who work with doctors' offices. So my first suggestion would be to talk to your OBGYN, do a little internet surfing, nothing wrong with that. Lactation consultant near me is one of the most highly searched terms that I can see on my website, which is really funny. But I hate to see it at 2:00 in the morning. Right. Or I hate to get an email at 3 a.m. because I know that parent was up stressing. It's terrible.
Oh.
So yes, we're here. I hate to be used as a troubleshooting thing because I know that parent's already deep in the poop because they've called me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So again, I think the best message is to make your postpartum team. Who's going to help with breastfeeding? Who's going to help walk the dog? Who's going to help cook your food? Do you have family support? Would you consider a doula, a person that can help you during birth or after birth? My favorite people in the world are postpartum doulas that come in and help. What's the team going to look like for you? You deserve a team. And I love to be on the team. So we do prenatal visits all the time. It's our signature service at Oh Baby. We love it. We talk about what to expect. We talk about how to make a lot of milk. And then you have somebody in your corner. You're not searching for me at 2 a.m. You already know me. And that's a huge plus. And so lots of us in the community who are private practice, and we have a lot of people doing this work right now. I'm so honored to be in the company I'm in, and we're here, so we're findable.
That's awesome. And how can people find you?
ohbabylactation.com, OHBABY, lactation.com. And all of everything is there on social media, Oh Baby Lactation on Instagram and on Facebook. And people find us, they just do.
And you also are a podcast host.
I am the Happy Nipple. Yes.
The Happy Nipple. That is awesome. What can people expect on that podcast?
Lots of discussion with other birth professionals. I found it really important to be able to talk about lots of other things, just not a nipple, but lots of other things around nipples. Talk to a mental health provider. I've got a physical therapist on there, lots of doulas. Moms, we're going to be having a nipple episode very soon with another lactation consultant. Tongue tie. I have a tongue tie episode coming up. I'm not as productive podcasting because I'm usually seeing patients, so they kind of come out randomly. But you can find it on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcast, YouTube, all the places that you find podcasts. And it helps when your son is an audio engineer.
Oh yeah, I would say.
Yeah, so he helps. He's the one thing. He's the impetus for that. So I'm really excited that I can do that. Normally, I would not be able to have the umph to do it, but he's pretty smart, so it helps.
That's awesome, Lori. Thank you so much for coming on today and just, grazing the nipple, if you will, with just a little bit of information that us mamas need.
Listen, again, one more shot of rainbow boobs for everyone to see her in her rainbow glory. But find an IBCLC in your community. There's lots of us that do good work, and we make a difference, and we really help. And happy IBCLC Day to 2023 to everybody.
Yes, I know you do amazing work, and we are so lucky to have you in our community. And
I'm so grateful for that. Thank you.
No, really, and we're so lucky to have this information that you provide, because again, it takes a community. We have to.
It's a village, girl. It totally is.
Yeah. It feels more like like a city, a metropolis. Some days.
You know what? You said it. You're 100% right. Yeah, definitely. And I can't wait to talk to you. You're going to come visit me.
Yes, I can't wait.
We're going to talk about working parents, and that's going to be really exciting. Yeah, and yeah,
I'm ready to tackle that topic.
We're going to get into the poop.
I love it. Oh, thank you so much, Lori.
You're welcome. Take care, Nicole. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe to Mommyhood Unscripted. Share it with your friends, too. It's available on iTunes, Google Play, Roku, and everywhere else you get your podcast. I'm Nicole Nalepa. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, Mama, you're doing great.